There's a moment just before the chaos begins when everything goes quiet. A breath is held. A stare lingers too long. Words hang in the air, sharpened by tension. It could be a heated meeting at work, a dinner table argument spiraling out of control, a stranger stepping too close, too fast. Something primal switches on. And suddenly you're no longer thinking, you're reacting. The heartbeat quickens. The mind locks onto the threat. Every muscle tightens for battle. And yet, some people stay still. Not frozen. Not afraid. Just calm. Like they've already lived this moment 1,000 times before. Like they know something you don't. What do they see that you can't? Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." In confrontation, most people are puppets, tugged around by invisible emotions, old wounds, and inherited fears. They think they're defending themselves, but really, they're reliving something deeper. That's why staying calm isn't a trick. It's not breathing exercises and mantras whispered under pressure. It's not a fake smile while rage boils underneath. True, calmness, unchanging, unshakable calmness comes from somewhere else, somewhere darker, somewhere most people avoid. Jung understood that the human psyche is a battlefield, and that every external confrontation is just a mirror of the inner one, the battle between who we think we are and what we've tried so hard not to be. To stay calm in confrontation, you have to meet the parts of yourself that don't want to be calm at all. The angry child, the repressed memory, the insecure ego, the need to dominate, the fear of being humiliated, the part of you that wants to scream, hit, destroy. Most people suppress it. The calm ones confront it, long before the world gives them a reason to. This isn't self-help. It's self-confrontation. And there's no way out, but through. Because until you face the war inside you, you'll never understand why you keep losing the ones outside. And that's where this begins. Not with the argument, but with the silence before it. The moment before the explosion. Carl Jung didn't believe in surface-level fixes. To him, human behavior, especially in conflict, was never about logic. It was about shadow. The shadow is everything we hide, everything we deny, everything we judge in others but secretly carry ourselves. Jung believed that when we meet someone aggressive, rude, controlling, our reaction reveals more about us than them. It's not about the other person, it's about what they awaken in us. Anger, fear, defensiveness. These aren't signs of moral clarity. They're signs of unconscious identification. You feel attacked because part of you believes it. You feel disrespected because part of you still doubts your worth. You feel enraged because something they said echoed an old wound you never healed. And that's the trap. Every confrontation feels like a new event. But Jung would argue, it's a reenactment, a performance, the same cast of emotions, just different costumes. Your boss reminds you of your controlling father. Your partner's tone echoes your mother's criticism. A stranger's insult revives the humiliation you buried in high school. Without even knowing it, you're not reacting to what's in front of you. You're reacting to ghosts. This is what Jung meant by making the unconscious conscious. He didn't mean enlightenment. He meant self-defense, because if you don't understand what's inside you, someone else will, whether it's a manipulative friend, an abusive partner, or a ruthless authority figure, and they'll use it against you. This is how calmness becomes power, not because calm people are passive, but because they've already wrestled with the demons that others still run from. They don't need to win the argument. They've already won the battle inside, so when tension rises, they don't panic. When someone insults them, they don't flinch. They know what's theirs and what isn't. They can tell the difference between an external attack and an internal echo. And that awareness, more than any clever comeback or physical strength, is what separates weakness from composure. It's what Jung called individuation, the lifelong process of becoming whole. Not good, not bad, not polite or polite-seeming. Whole. That means integrating the calm with the rage, the mature adult with the wounded child, the civilized self with the primal instincts. When someone shouts, they don't shout back, but not because they're scared, because they've already shouted at themselves in the mirror and survived it. Jung's psychology isn't for the faint of heart. It's not about being nice or appearing wise. It's about earning your peace, and that peace only comes after war, the war inside you. You've felt it before. The rush, one word, one gesture, one look, and your whole system lights up. Heart rate spikes, breathing shortens, muscles tighten, logic vanishes, time slows. It's not weakness, it's biology. Your brain doesn't see a disagreement, it sees a threat. And when it sees a threat, it stops asking questions. It takes action. Welcome to the fight or flight response. Millions of years ago, this kept us alive. A wild animal appeared and the body reacted instantly. Fight it or run. No time to reflect. No space to think. Just survive. But now the animals wear suits. They sit across dinner tables. They drive luxury cars. They speak politely before they strike. And your nervous system? It can't tell the difference. It still reacts like it's life or death, even when it's just a conversation. That's why your voice shakes, why your face heats up, why your hands tremble even when you're trying to seem strong. You're not crazy. You're just wired for a world that no longer exists. Carl Jung understood this. He didn't ignore biology. He looked deeper. He knew the primitive brain lives inside the modern one. The amygdala, responsible for fear and emotional reactions, often hijacks the rest of your mind before you can even speak. You think you're responding to the person in front of you, but really you're defending yourself from a phantom buried deep in your evolutionary past. That's why your brain can't tell the difference between emotional and physical danger. Being ignored can feel like being hunted. Being insulted can feel like being attacked by a predator. And rejection? To your primitive brain, it might as well be death, because in ancient tribes, to be cast out meant you wouldn't survive the night. So when you get triggered, your system isn't just upset. It's preparing for annihilation. This is why just stay calm doesn't work. You can't outthink adrenaline with positive thoughts. You can't reason with a system that's already decided you're in danger. But here's the paradox. Calm isn't the absence of adrenaline. It's the ability to recognize it without becoming it. The calm person still feels the fire. They just don't pour gasoline on it because they've trained themselves through reflection, awareness, repetition, not to react to the first signal. They wait, they breathe, they observe. They let the initial surge pass like a wave crashing over the rocks, and once it does, they remain standing. Jung believed that the unconscious isn't just psychological, it's physiological. The memories of every experience, every insult, every humiliation, they live not only in the mind, but in the body. That's why conflict feels so physical. Because it is. You're not just responding to words, you're responding to your entire history with those words, the tones, the meanings, the threats they've carried before. So how do you stay calm? First, by understanding that your reaction is not you. It's your history, screaming for attention. And second, by practicing the pause. Not the silence that comes from fear, but the silence that comes from strength, the ability to feel everything, and choose not to be controlled by any of it. This isn't suppression, it's ownership. You own your rage, you own your fear, you own your instinct to run, or fight, or lash out. And when you own them, they no longer own you. That's the biology of confrontation. And understanding it is the first step toward mastering it. In a rational world, the calmest person would lead the room. But we don't live in a rational world. We live in one built on outrage, on speed, on noise. The person who shouts first is heard. The one who reacts strongest gets attention. The loudest voice wins, even if it says nothing at all. That's the paradox of modern society. It rewards the uncalm. Scroll through social media, and what do you see? Not reflection, not depth, just triggers. Headlines designed to inflame, opinions sharpened into weapons. emotional bait, and billions of people biting. Outrage has become a currency, and calmness, it's treated like apathy, indifference, weakness. You stay silent during an argument and they say you're avoiding it. You don't retaliate when insulted and they call you spineless. You walk away from a fight and people assume you lost. But Carl Jung warned against this illusion. He saw that in an unconscious society, reaction becomes a form of entertainment. Even worship. The more extreme your emotions, the more you're seen as authentic. The more triggered you are, the more people believe you care. But reaction isn't power. It's dependency. It means your mood, your peace, your self-worth are all held hostage by someone else's behavior. And that's not strength. That's slavery. The truly powerful aren't the ones who explode. They're the ones who could, but don't. Because they've made a choice. Not to be manipulated. Not by people, not by culture, not by systems that thrive on your emotional instability. Modern culture teaches you that to be seen, you must shout. That to be respected, you must dominate. That to survive, you must react. But that's exactly what keeps you trapped. Reacting means surrendering your power the moment someone presses the right button. It means being predictable, programmable, controllable. And the systems that run society today, they're built for that. Marketing campaigns that provoke insecurity so you'll buy something. News cycles that amplify fear so you'll stay tuned. Algorithms that push outrage so you'll keep scrolling. Even politics has become theater. Less about truth, more about who can trigger the other side faster. In that environment, calm people are dangerous, not because they're passive, but because they're immune. They don't buy what you're selling just because you made them feel small. They don't vote based on fear or scream based on headlines. They've trained themselves to pause long enough to think, and thinking, in a world driven by reaction, is revolutionary. Jung believed that true individuation requires separation, not from others, but from the emotional currents that pull everyone else under. To think your own thoughts, to feel your own emotions, to respond rather than react. That's what society can't easily exploit. So yes, calmness is punished, but not because it's weak, because it's powerful, because it threatens the mechanisms that depend on your panic, your rage, your blind obedience. In a world built to provoke, the calm man becomes untouchable, not because he doesn't feel, but because he refuses to be ruled by what he feels. You walk into a room and someone doesn't make eye contact. Your heart skips. Someone speaks to you with a sharp tone. Your stomach tightens. A colleague ignores your idea. You can't sleep that night. It doesn't make sense, on the surface. These moments are small, harmless, forgettable, but something deeper is happening beneath your awareness. You're not reacting to the present. You're reacting to the past. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Most confrontations aren't really about the confrontation itself. They're echoes, triggers, ghosts of something older, a parent's disapproval, a childhood humiliation, a betrayal you never processed. The modern world is full of mirrors that reflect these buried parts of you. A boss becomes your father, a friend becomes your rival, a partner becomes the one who abandoned you. Your nervous system doesn't see them for who they are. It sees what they represent, symbols from your personal mythology. So when you snap, when you withdraw, when you feel that sudden, disproportionate wave of fear or rage, it's not just the situation, it's your wound, flaring open again. Jung believed that the psyche stores these experiences as complexes, emotional knots that live in the unconscious. And when triggered, they hijack you. You become someone else, not because you've lost control, but because you've been possessed by a fragment of yourself you never integrated. This is why calmness in confrontation feels so difficult, because it's not about dealing with the person in front of you. It's about dealing with the person inside of you, the one who still wants approval, the one who still feels powerless, the one who's been waiting for someone to say, "You were right, you mattered, You didn't deserve that. But no confrontation will ever heal that. No argument will ever undo it. Because healing doesn't happen in the heat of the moment. It happens in reflection, in silence, in your willingness to sit with the discomfort long enough to learn from it, not run from it. Calmness isn't just emotional control. It's emotional archaeology. It's digging through the ruins of your memory and uncovering the truths you buried, because they hurt too much to face. And once you face them, the trigger loses its power. Not because the world becomes kinder, but because you become whole. The insult doesn't hit as hard. The rejection doesn't sting as deeply. The silence of others doesn't echo as loudly. Because you're no longer waiting for the outside world to give you something only the inside world can provide. Self-respect, self-knowledge, self-sovereignty. That's why Jung called individuation, the process of becoming your true self, a moral obligation, not to society, but to your own soul. Because the more unconscious wounds you carry, the more likely you are to confuse pain with truth and lash out in defense of a past that no longer exists. But the more you face your past with courage, the more power you gain in the present. And power, Jung understood, doesn't come from domination. It comes from integration, from taking every fractured piece of your being and making it one. In a world that worships reaction, non-reaction feels unnatural, uncomfortable, even dangerous. Silence during confrontation is mistaken for weakness. Stillness is seen as surrender. But Carl Jung understood that silence is not the absence of power. It is its most potent form. Non-reaction isn't about ignoring pain. It's not about pretending something doesn't bother you. It's the conscious choice to create space between stimulus and response, between trigger and truth. It's where real power is born, because reaction is reflex, but non-reaction is mastery. Jung didn't use the word non-reaction, but his concept of shadow work hinted at the same discipline. When someone provokes you, what's really happening? They've touched something raw, a shadow, a part of you you'd rather not see, your anger, your insecurity, your need for control. And what do most people do when their shadow is exposed? They lash out, defend, attack, all to protect a fragile sense of self that was never made whole. But Jung believed true strength lies in integrating that shadow, not repressing it, not expressing it blindly, but noticing it, studying it, making it conscious. So when you feel the heat rise in your chest, pause. When your pride screams to respond, pause. When your ego begs for revenge, pause. Not forever. Just long enough to choose differently, because that pause is your liberation. It's where the ego loosens its grip, where the unconscious becomes visible, where the self steps in and says, I will not be controlled by a pattern I don't understand. That moment of stillness is not passive. It's not soft. It's an act of internal rebellion against every force trying to manipulate you, your past, your trauma, your programming, your culture. This is why Jung often spoke of holding the tension of opposites. It's the discipline of not collapsing into reaction or repression, but staying present with both, the urge to act and the wisdom to wait. It's not easy. It burns. Your mind screams for resolution. Your body floods with adrenaline. Your pride feels threatened. But if you can hold it just for a few seconds, you've done something most people will never do. You've broken the cycle. You've stopped yourself from becoming a puppet to your worst instincts. You've created a new path. One that isn't based on fear or pride or revenge, but on clarity. That clarity doesn't just change confrontations. It changes you. Because each time you choose non-reaction, you reclaim something, a part of your mind, a piece of your dignity, a deeper understanding of yourself. You become harder to manipulate, harder to provoke, not because you're cold, but because you've seen the fire inside you and learned how to sit with it. You've stared at your anger without letting it blind you. You've faced your insecurity without letting it define you. You've heard the insult, but refused to become it. Jung once said, Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. That's the secret hidden inside confrontation. Every trigger is a teacher. Every insult is a mirror. Every argument is a map, pointing toward your most unhealed parts. But only if you're willing to pause, to listen, to not react. This is the hidden art, the forgotten discipline. In a society trained to escalate, you de-escalate. In a world obsessed with being right, you choose to be whole. In a culture built on control, you let go. That's the paradox of non-reaction. The less you try to win the confrontation, the more you win yourself. And that, Jung believed, was the only victory that truly matters. Imagine standing at the center of a storm, wind howling, accusations flying, everything around you pulling you into the chaos. But inside, stillness. Not because the world has calmed, but because you have. This is the test Carl Jung warned about, not in words of comfort, but in the brutal clarity of psychological truth. The world will always be chaotic. People will always provoke, misunderstand, betray, and challenge you. But none of it can truly harm you, unless it finds an accomplice inside, your own mind. That's the final test of any confrontation. Will you be ruled by the outside or governed from within? Jung believed that inner power is the rarest form of strength because it cannot be faked. It cannot be borrowed. It must be forged through suffering, insight, and the long road of individuation. In other words, you must become a person the world cannot easily move, not hardened, not numb, but centered. And centering begins with recognizing this brutal truth. Most people aren't confronting you. They're confronting their own projections. You remind them of someone. You trigger their fear of being ignored, overpowered, unseen. They lash out, not because you're dangerous, but because you disturb their illusion of control. And if you don't understand this, you'll get pulled into their unconscious drama. You'll fight a battle that was never yours. You'll react to their chaos with your own. But if you see it, if you truly understand that most confrontations are not personal, but symbolic, you can step back, not in weakness, but in sovereignty. You stop trying to win. You start trying to understand. And that shift changes everything, because now you're not participating in their chaos. You're witnessing it. You're not adding fire, you're holding water. And in that state, something strange happens. People start revealing themselves. The louder they shout, the more they expose their fear. The more they try to dominate, the more they reveal their insecurity. You don't have to destroy them.
You just have to stay conscious. The greatest act of power in a confrontation is often this: to remain unshaken, not passive, not silent, but grounded. You say what needs to be said. You don't say what doesn't. You choose your response, not based
on emotion, but on insight. Jung called this living from the self, a deeper, more authentic center of identity that isn't chained to ego or shadow. When you live from that place, you stop being a character in other people's stories. You start becoming the author of your own. And once you've tasted that kind of power, everything changes. You no longer fear being disliked, because you no longer depend on approval. You no longer fear being misunderstood, because your clarity is not for others but for yourself. You no longer fear confrontation, because you understand it's not something to be avoided. It's something to be transcended. The real confrontation was never with them. It was with yourself, with your fear, with your wounds, with the part of you that believed calmness was weakness. Now you see the truth. Calmness is control. Stillness is strength. Non-reaction is revolution. And when you live from that place, not perfectly, not always, but consciously, you don't just survive confrontations, you master them. Not because you win, but because you no longer need to. Carl Jung never promised peace. He never told us the world would become gentler if we healed ourselves. He never suggested that awakening would make life easier. Instead, he offered something far more radical. A new kind of weapon not forged from force, but from stillness. A weapon not to conquer others, but to protect yourself from becoming lost in them. That weapon is calm. Not the kind of calm that comes from meditation apps or deep breaths, but the deeper calm, the brutal, sacred calm. That comes when you've stared into your own chaos and survived it, when you've watched your ego burn in the fire of confrontation and still walked out whole, when you've said, "This situation will not define me. This insult will not shape me. This moment will not control me." That is the kind of calm Jung meant. Not the absence of emotion, but the mastery of it. Because the final truth is this: you cannot control the world. You cannot fix everyone. You cannot prevent betrayal, lies, or violence, but you can control how you carry your soul through the storm. That is the highest achievement of consciousness. It's not to avoid the fight. It's to enter the fight without losing your clarity. It's to face confrontation without collapsing into rage or silence or shame. It's to remain centered, awake, and aware, while everything around you tries to pull you back into sleep. This is why Jung's work remains so dangerous, not because it tells you how to win arguments, but because it tells you that winning doesn't matter, not in the way we've been taught. Victory isn't making someone submit. It's walking away with your integrity intact. It's looking at yourself in the mirror after the chaos and knowing, "I did not become the thing I hate." That is the revolution. That is the final lesson. The awakened man, the awakened woman, does not seek calm as an escape. They wield it like a sword that cuts through illusion, a sword that severs attachment to ego, to pride, to domination. Sword that says, "I will not descend to the level of unconsciousness just because someone else has. Because I've seen my shadow, and I've made peace with it. I've looked into the abyss, and I no longer fear what's inside." That is what makes you untouchable, not armor, but awareness, not defense, but depth, not aggression, but calm. The world will continue to test you. People will provoke. Situations will erupt. Injustice will knock at your door. But you will not be moved by every sound, every insult, every glance. Because you've built a home inside yourself that no one can burn down. And that home is guarded by silence, by stillness, by the kind of calm that only comes when you've faced yourself and chosen to become more than your past. That is what Jung left us with. Not a map to escape confrontation, but a mirror that says, the battlefield is within, and once you win there, no one else can truly defeat you. So when the next storm comes, and it will, stand firm, breathe deep, remember what you are, and walk through the fire, calm, clear, awake. Because now you know, calm is not weakness. Calm is not surrender. Calm is power.